This year, they estimated at $450 billion cost for the seniors like myself and most of us here. My question is that I saw in a report that they figure that 20% of that is fraudulent claims. And that is a lot of money. And I was listening to a radio program one time where a doctor and his wife, who were 80 years old and perfect health, happened to just look at their bill and saw that they were charged for hover rounds or those motorized wheelchairs when they both play golf 3 times a week and walking. And that's a lot of strain on the budget. And I just want to know, what are they doing about that? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Well, we have specific laws with respect to waste, fraud, and abuse. One of the things that I have been critical of in terms of the Congress since I went back in 2005, I was critical when I was there the first time around, is we don't do a good enough job of oversight. The Congress of the United States is supposed to do oversight of the executive agencies, including those that run Medicare and Medicaid, and I think we need to do a better job of that. We do have a whole cadre of employees on the federal level that deal with that issue. On the state level, at least when I was Attorney General, the state was given the responsibility largely of dealing with Medicaid fraud, or as we call it in California, Medi-Cal, and I had an entire unit that just dealt with that issue. One of the difficulties we had there was the ability of those who wanted to cheat the system to change their tactics. We would just be getting intelligence or good information on the way they were scamming the system one place, and we would have agents out there, we'd go out and we would prosecute a case, and they would switch their tactics. So, I mean, it's always a constant effort to go after. I remember when my mother-in-law, who was quite a bit older, called my wife up and said she was getting all of these adult diapers. I mean, in just quantities that she couldn't possibly use. And she hadn't ordered them. And it was one of those scams. And I wasn't in Congress at the time. I think I may have been in law school or something. And so we contacted the local office to let them know this. I mean, this woman living alone, 3,000 miles away from where we were, and it was just being delivered. She was just sort of piling them up in her mobile home. So those kind of scams. There are some that are just outright, and those are the ones that we have to deal with. So I think we have to have a heightened awareness of that and prosecution of that. In terms of some of the approaches we have to have, I think in order for us to have a debate, I do think it is fair for us to say that those already on Social Security or Medicare are not going to be affected by changes, in part because they have relied on the system as it was presented to them. So then the question becomes, what about people who are not yet on it but close to it? And that is a public policy decision to be made. I've made the judgment that I think 55 is a good cutoff date. There are others who say, no, it ought to be 60. Now, if you make it 60, you have greater savings because you affect that population sooner, or that population otherwise would not be affected, and you begin to, with some of the reforms, be able to garner some of the savings at an earlier time. For me, I've just decided that 55 to 65 is an area of people being within hailing distance of this program that they paid into, and I just think that for purposes of assurance, that we ought to do it. Now, others argue that we ought to be 60. I assume we'll have that argument. And you can adjust the numbers based on that and figure out what the savings would be. But see, I think that's an adult conversation we ought to have. The proposal that I have supported is for those under 55 that they would have a Medicare system that would be patterned after the health care system that is available to all federal employees. That is, federal agency qualifies a large number of providers, all the way from strict HMOs to fee-for-service, with all of the difference in premiums that would be engaged in there. And people are given a certain amount of money towards that, with you getting more money if you're at the bottom of the income level, and less money if you're at the top of the income level. I guess it's sort of means testing in that regard. I mean, there are a lot of other details, but that's what I would do. But again, we've got to have an adult conversation on it. We're not going to solve the problem by saying, oh my God, you want to kill it, or oh my God, there's no problem. I think there is a problem. I think we've got to review it that way. Yes, sir.
You said earlier that the national debt is a result of irresponsible spending patterns.
Yeah.
Well, at least 20% of it is a result of irresponsible borrowing. You guys in Congress have borrowed over the last 30 years $3 trillion of surpluses from the Social Security Fund, rather than collect taxes. Now that there's no more surpluses to borrow, how are you going to collect the taxes to pay back what you already borrowed and spent? Especially considering the Northwest split. How do you pay back what you already borrowed and spent?
Well, you say what I already borrowed and spent. What we already borrowed and spent as a country, all right? I mean, it's been Democrats, Republicans, Republican presidents, Democratic presidents, Republican Congress, and Democrats. We've been in this together. I know it's a lot easier to point somebody else and say, you're the problem, but frankly, we have been in this together. Let's put it this way. Now, here's what's happened. When the Social Security system was set up, it was set up with the fact that you get payments when you're 65, right? The average lifespan in America at that time was 62. Now figure that one out. That would mean the average American would never qualify for Social Security. Payments. We also had a much larger number of people working relative to the ones who qualified for payments for Social Security. We have right now 10,000 baby boomers a day qualifying for Social Security. 10,000 a day. We've never seen that before. In the background of all this, when you had more people or more money paying in, more people paying in than people receiving, you had surpluses that built up. Those surpluses are reflected by documents that are actually held in a couple of file cabinets in a federal building in West Virginia. That's, if you really want to physically look at what the trust fund is, that's where it is. These are basically IOUs that sit there and say, this is what's been contributed into the Social Security system. There was a surplus during this period of time, therefore we did not have to pay it out, the surplus out. During that period of time, we used that money in other parts of government, in essence borrowing it from the Social Security Trust Fund, with a commitment that it will be redeemed. We've rarely had to redeem that, although in the last year we have. Because in the last year, for periods of time, we actually had more money going out than going in, so we had to start redeeming that. How do you redeem that? You redeem that out of the general revenues or general taxes and borrowing of the federal government. When people say the system is going to implode, what they're saying is, by a date certain, you will run out of all of those IOUs. We actually will redeem all those IOUs in addition to using all the money that's paid in by employer and employee in a particular year. At that point in time, there is no longer the left pocket of the federal government by legal obligation required to put money into the right pocket of the federal government. In other words, the IOUs are all gone. So at that point in time, you got to figure, is it all going to go on straight right then to new taxes, or what are we going to do about it? So what the argument has been is, recognizing that day of reckoning is coming up sooner and sooner, we've got to look at the system to see how we make it work. And how do we make it work? Do we increase the cutoff point at which you contribute into the system? Do we talk about means testing for some of the folks in there? Do we have a change in the system with respect to those of a certain age and so forth? But you're absolutely right, and that's the way the systems work. It has been a trust fund in the sense that the money is accounted for. It's been used, it hasn't just been sitting there. It's been used and will be paid back over time. We're now going through the payback period, but the day of reckoning is coming. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, you got to pay for it somehow. And you got to pay for it. It's one of the obligations of payment of the government. And it's one of the automatic obligations of government at the present time. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's all of us together. We have allowed this to come about. And so now we've got to deal with it, I think. Because as far as I can tell, my kids didn't make those decisions. My grandkids certainly didn't make those decisions. But they're the ones that this is going to be visited upon. So I think we've got to be adult and we've got to look at it. See the numbers as you talked about them. See what we've done in the past. But see where we are now and how we operate going forward. I'm sorry, we're a little after 12. I got to be back down in Gold River at 1 o'clock. And so I got to hustle to go. I want to thank you all for being here. We'll answer any other questions with my staff as we come about. And if you ask them and give us some means by which we can get back to you on that. I want to thank all of you for being here. I particularly want to thank my friend, the sheriff, for not only introducing me, but sitting here the whole time. And police chief, thank you for being in attendance as well. Vice Mayor, thank you, sir. And all of you, we thank you very much. God bless you. And